Hello, and welcome to the back room, where we talk about national politics, local politics, and even really local Bronx politics. I'm Lisa Schifrin. I'm your host. I'm a Republican speechwriter.
I'm David Eisenbach, presidential historian.
And tonight we have with us Tyreek Goodman, who is running for city council from District 8 here in the Bronx.
Hey, how y'all doing? Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So you know what? This week is such a New York week.
Crazy week.
Crazy week. Mayor Adams is really in hot water. It kind of looks like the governor, the city council, everybody's trying to throw him out because of his little deal with Trump about getting the corruption charges dismissed. Tyreek, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think Governor Hochul is going to throw him out of office?
Well, I see it like this, right? When you put anybody back against the wall and they need things to get done, of course, behind the deal, deals always get made, But what we have to understand is that him being thrown under the bus and a lot of people trying to stay away from him is because they know that their stuff as well will also be put out on Front Street. And that's what they want to avoid, But no matter what, people have to answer for how, how these funds has been mistreated and how our communities has been mistreated, by the administration that has been ruling over New York. And when I say ruling, it's because it's like a dictatorship. Our voice don't really matter.
Well, that's true. It's certainly about illegal immigrants, which is what he's in hot water for.
Well, this is the problem, is that, yes, there was an indictment, but then it gets dropped. None of these charges have been proven in a court of law. So it's very hard for the governor to step in here and say, all right, you got to go, if he never had his day in court. Right? And then we got the option, they call it the inability council, in which you have the comptroller and the corporation council and the city council speaker and one of the borough presidents, then a deputy mayor. Then the other option is for them to get together, and they need 4 to approve a recommendation to the city council. City council then votes, and you get 2/3 of the city council to bounce him out. You can bounce him out. Problem with that is it was designed after Ed Koch had a stroke, and it was really designed just for like physical, medical conditions, not for, wait a second, this guy has adopted a policy, in this case regarding migrants, that we don't like. Therefore, it doesn't matter what the law says, doesn't matter if he hasn't been convenient, he hasn't gotten his day in court, we're just getting rid of him. That is not what the spirit of the law was established for.
I think it's a slightly different thing. I think part of what's going on is the leftist Democrats who run our city really do not like...
I wish they were leftists. They're not really leftists.
They're really leftist.
No, they're not.
They really don't like the fact that Eric Adams is doing business with Trump, which he had to do to get this federal charge dismissed. But he's also agreeing to cooperate with Tom Homan about arresting illegals. I think this is a way of showing not just him, but every black politician in the country that you don't do business with Trump and you don't go up against the Biden administration on something like illegal immigration.
Well, I say this, right? When we talk about freedom of choice and freedom of speech, one thing I have to say is that just because you're in the same party doesn't mean you have to agree with somebody.
That's for sure.
So when somebody is doing wrong and, I believe there is people on the other side who's trying, but at the end of the day, nobody can't cover up all this corruption that's been going on. At the end I'm not saying he's corrupt because you're always innocent until proven guilty. But the thing is that when you make these deals, and nobody from where we come from beats the feds. So Of course, a deal is made, right? And what is the deal? Now we're talking about letting ice into our boroughs to combat against the migrants and things like that. But we wouldn't even have this issue here if he never said yes
To what?
to just being a sanctuary city.
Oh, I see. Right.
You know, we have to understand this. And a lot of them, you know, they want to pull back. They want to say, no, we wasn't behind this decision. But y'all was, and y'all backed him.
Well, no,
So-
it's interesting because I think when he said yes to New York being a sanctuary city, which it already had been declared before he showed up, he wasn't in charge of the budget. He didn't have to actually pay for illegal immigrants to live in 4-star hotels and be fed whatever they want to eat. He wasn't paying $60 billion, you know, for their upkeep.
Well, I say this, was that not the party agenda? To take care of others instead of us, the taxpaying citizens?
Well,
At the
I
end of the
agree
day,
with you.
for
No,
somebody
no.
that comes from where we come from and that looks like me, I'm expected to be represented in a certain way to where my rights and what I speak and what I pay for gets reciprocated, whether it's through the educational system, whether it's through making sure the homeless that we have actually here are housed.
Well, you're dead right. That this is in some ways about, as you just said, people who look like you. Black men are the people who are hurt the most in terms of the labor market, in terms of getting jobs, by an economy that is all about giving jobs to illegals who will undercut everybody in America for wages. So, I mean, that's just been a problem where they're working.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it like this, and I want to make this very clear, and I want to talk to the people. Migrants are not our issue. Asylum seekers are not our issue. The issue is the elected officials that put them in front of our face, knowing that we need help. So right about now, you're stuck in. I would hate to be him because he's stuck in a hard, tough position. You're not gonna make nobody happy no matter what decision you make. The only thing he should probably worry about right now is it even worth running again, or who's gonna support him. Because if I was in his party, and at the end of the day, now for them to turn back against him shows a lot about who they are. And not only that, if y'all gonna back away from this man, also break down what's been going on. Tell the truth all the way around. See, we gotta hold these politicians and political parties accountable for the state of quality of our, our environment.
Can you tell us about your district? How is the migrant crisis going on in your district?
I'm from District 8.
Which is where?
In the South Bronx, and also it covers a part of Mount Haven area and the Bruckner, and they decided to put 2,200 men. Well, they decided to make a 2,200 migrant shelter to house 2,200 men and give them beds. Sorry if I didn't say that correctly. And the thing is that you're putting this in a neighborhood where there's a high crime rate, a high poverty rate. Everywhere you look, there's a liquor store. You know, when you talk about people of us having, able to start businesses, that is not even talked about. Just to make an LLC in New York is expensive. A non-for-profit is expensive, So.
And this week we learned that the Department of Homeland Security has been giving out business startup funds
Right.
to illegal immigrants.
Free board, free shelter, and my thing is that how can you put them first where you have people of need, people that's in poverty?
Right, Americans.
Right, Americans. And when we talk about, because understand this, as a youth, and if you want to change the youth ideology and mindset, if you don't take care of their parents, you can't expect them to grow up thinking that, we are Americans. We are part of the American system, not when you put everybody else before them.
Well, that's great. I understand you were out there protesting
Yes.
about this shelter.
Yes, we was out there protesting. Shout out to the bishop. Also, shout out to the young Republicans and also the Republican Party and the Bronx Conservative Party. And my guy Duran Gonzalo, Chris Reeds.
Curtis Lee was there.
Curtis Lee was even there. And it was great to have all these people come out together and stand as one and say, hey, look, enough is enough. And what affects our district affects everyone's district.
Well, it's so interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I predicted that Mayor Adams would run as a Republican. I no longer think that. I think that's been taken away. Curtis Sliwa is going to be the Republican candidate.
Yes.
He's gotten endorsements already, and he's clearly been preparing for this. And so Mayor Adams is actually in a tight spot about running as a Democrat because Governor Cuomo will be running against him when he announces, which needs to be in the next
Clock
couple
is
of
ticking.
weeks. The clock is ticking.
Definitely.
I mean, you're starting petitioning
Yes,
and
yes. And just to talk about, Curtis Leroy, he's a phenomenal guy. Today I got to hear him speak in person. We come from a different generation, so I had to learn about him.
Oh, yes.
And also to see the work that he put in and the fight that he's doing, to me, I want to mimic some of that work for my own, as also elevating the people, understanding that we need our community back. The gangs and the politicians does not control our community. It's the taxpaying citizens that control and make the decisions there.
What's another issue that your campaign is about?
One of the things that we like to focus on is child protection. We need things put things in perspective and in place to protect our children and in our youth, and as well as youth enrollment, youth engagement. At 16, you could become a part of the community board. No matter what your criminal record is. At 18, you can run for local government, no matter what your criminal record is. So when we sit there and we look at Donald Trump, who's now president, and everybody says, well, he's a felon, he was this and that. To me, I'm not fazed, and I tell my people, hey, don't be fazed. This is a good time for us, because now this means that you're not going to be held back by your mistakes.
And people complain about politics, but there are opportunities to get involved.
It is.
But a lot of people aren't aware of how
Well,
many.
don't you think you had a slightly easier path because you chose the unconventional route of becoming a conservative?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, I definitely. Listen, I would say this, right? And I'll make this very clear. Opportunity always comes. And I want to let my people understand this too, right? When you deal with politics, you got to understand that you're going to have all different type of people that come to you that necessarily might not want to use the work but use your likeness. Luckily, I met a good group of people who said, you know what, let's go out there and work. And I challenged them. I said, listen, I'm not going to represent your party or represent, your values if y'all not representing mine or protecting my people. And one of the good things is they gave me the information to give to my people to say, hey, get them on the community board. Get them running for local government. And right now, being a conservative Republican, we're looking to take in the youth, to get them in running for local office.
That would be great. You know what? We are going to go to a public service announcement, and we'll be right back. So please stay tuned. Welcome back to the back room. We're going to talk a little bit about what the Trump administration is up to. It's been such a whirlwind in the month, the exact month since he was inaugurated, one thing after another. Today, we're seeing a lot of progress made on ending the war in Ukraine. This isn't exactly it'll be done a day after I get in office, but it's pretty close. A month is not so long. What do you think, David? What's going on?
Well, we're seeing a kind of global historic shift that we haven't seen since the end of the Second World War, when you had the emergence of the big three. You had Churchill and Stalin and FDR coming together and deciding the fate of the world. Trump is coming in and he says, you know what, we're going back to the great power politics. All right, it's going to be me, Putin, and Xi, and we're going to make the decisions. And all you little guys, I don't want to hear your complaints. And, it's a really an important historic moment.
I mean, honestly, I think when it comes to spending our money, we have been spending a lot of money and investing a lot of time in this war, in this situation. We have a whole ocean that separates us from them. Not saying that we shouldn't be out there to support the underdog or the little guy, but we also got to understand that we also must respect other nations' borders and their security as well.
And if that little guy's war, right, gets us closer to World War III, I got no interest in being involved in it anymore.
In all honesty, how did we get involved into this?
Well, that was Biden.
It's our job to kind of parry when the Soviets, when the Russians attack.
No, it's not. We've looked the other way plenty of times throughout
but
history.
I say
You can't look the other way.
We do it all the time. We look the other way with anything that happens in Africa. The only reason why we got involved in that was because we wanted the minerals and the natural gas, and we wanted to get regime change in Russia.
I think that's actually an interesting point, the minerals. The fact that Trump sent the Secretary of the Treasury to tell Zelensky that he needed to fork over a bunch of strategic minerals for us to continue shelling out money. I thought that was fascinating and fabulous.
It's a new way of doing business.
I would say this, right? Because we got to look at it like this. This war would have never happened had Trump been in office because of the close relationship and ties, as they so-called say, with Russia. And I'm not saying that they're friends, but we had an understanding.
More fear. I think Russia.
But we had a more understanding when it came to NATO. We had an understanding when it came to NATO a few years ago about Ukraine joining NATO, and this is what this is all about.
The Biden administration told Zelensky not to take the deal, and it was a deal that would have given autonomy to the Donbass region and the mostly Russian ethnic regions. They still would have been part of Ukraine. He had a deal. Ukraine had a deal with Putin, and the Biden administration got Boris Johnson to put the kibosh on it. That's how we got involved here. And it was a regime change war from the very beginning. It was a terrible mistake.
There were also a bunch of deep state people like Victoria.
Yeah, the regime change neocons.
Yes, the neocons working for color revolutions in 2014.
Yeah.
Setting things up so that Zelensky came in.
Overthrowing the neutral government that should never have been overthrown in the first place.
Right.
Ukraine would have been much better off neutral. And we would have saved hundreds of thousands of lives.
What's fascinating about what Trump's doing is that not only is it power business, the dealing part, but it's power politics.
Totally.
It's not, there's no sentiment to it.
No.
I mean, I agree. And one thing, I got to praise the man for coming in and saying, hey, look, we spending too much American tax dollars. Y'all need to end this. And y'all need to make this happen, because if y'all don't end this and come to a conclusion, then I have to deal with it my way. And not to say it like this, from where I come from, that's gangster, that's big.
Yeah.
And we need more people to be more straightforward, because at the end of the day, people are dying. Lives is on the line, but nobody got time to play on neither side. And at the end of the day, war loses money for everybody, and right now, it's in American pockets.
But you know what? I will say, against interest, it's not a good thing to be a bad ally. America as Ukraine's ally, we don't want to look like we're betraying them. We need to make sure they come out of this with enough standing and enough face that we don't look like we sold them out.
Look, this war was a loser from the very beginning. Ukraine could never win a war against Russia. Russia's fighting a war of attrition. They've already tipped the balance. They're going to keep on going until it gets some sort of peace deal.
Well,
they're never getting any of the land that they've lost back. That is for
I'll
certain.
say this. One thing I have to shout out the Ukraine people because nobody thought that they would last this long. And they did, you know? And it's sad to say, but they shown that they could defend themselves. But at the end of the day, when you pick a side, you got to also deal with the consequences. And right now, I agree with Trump. The war has been going on way too long. Let's come to a conclusion.
There are too many
and
people who
the
are
people
dead.
that's in the UK must protect them because they are closer. We should not be fronting most of that money and that bill when your country is literally right next to theirs.
Well, here's the interesting thing about Trump's proposal for the minerals. He wants the $500 billion, half the mineral wealth of Ukraine. Who knows if that number is even legit? But in return, we'll put some troops in there to guard the minerals. What do you think of that idea?
Well, let me ask you a question. You'll be a fool to think that Ukraine don't have business in America and
Okay.
not protecting their assets in America.
Right.
That's the only real reason why we're able to protect them. So at the end of the day, we don't need behind the door politics. So if this man is saying, hey, if we're gonna protect you, this is what we need, this is what we want, the world know, your citizens know, we're all in agreement, even the enemy know that once we make this deal, you touch them, this is the issue, and that gets the job done, then that's the type of man we need.
Okay. Other things that Trump is doing that have gotten some attention in the last week or so include sicking Elon Musk on the budget of the United States, on all of the spending that isn't so well documented and apparently isn't kept track of all that well by anybody's computer programs.
Well,
so
I
how is
was-
Doge doing?
Well, I was particularly appalled by the revelations that USAID was funding gain-of-function research, right, at the Wuhan lab,
Right.
and was
Funding
paying
it
off
hugely.
newspapers and shaping the media narratives. U.S. government sort of funding these as if we're the Soviet Union funding Pravda to shape the way our discourse goes. This is the kind of stuff the CIA was doing back in the 1950s and 60s with Operation Mockingbird. It's shameful that USAID was doing it just right up until a few months ago.
And that's not to say nothing of these transgender plays that we're putting on in Malaysia or Guatemala or Ireland and whatnot, all of this kind of cultural revolutionary stuff, the Marxism that USAID was used to subsidize.
We live in a world now where, you know, a lot of things are being exposed and being put to the forefront. And before growing up, I remember a day when we didn't trust the government, right? But the government, we looked at it as unified. Now we see a day and age where the same government that we was complaining about are now checking each other and, you know, proving some of the things that we already thought and was concerned about as citizens.
That's right.
So conspiracy theories is no longer theories no more.
That's right. That's
You know,
right.
so
But that's
what-
exactly what
exactly
Elon Musk
right.
is doing.
So for me, it's like, and we also got to. One thing I would say is we do have to be mindful of how much power we do give these billionaires, because at the end of the day, they are about a dollar and their legacy. But outside of that, people must understand that we, as especially people that come from where I come from, we've been complaining about the government. We've been saying that we can't trust them. We've been saying they've been misusing our funds. We've been saying Social Security ain't been helping.
And now
Medicaid
you have
is
all
not
this
enough.
proof.
Now you have the proof. So with that proof, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to still sit there and say, well, you know what, I'm going to continue to vote the same way I'm voting? No. You got to look at the person who even might look like you and say, hey, I trusted you. Why you ain't put me on to what's going on?
Why do you think Democrats are so hysterical about Elon Musk? I mean, they've gone out of their way. They're singing labor songs from the 1930s against him.
Well, here's number one. our base are federal employees, state employees. Once they start cutting those jobs, right, that really gets to the Democratic Party base. And unfortunately, that's a fact, and we ignore the needs of taxpayers.
And this is why people must understand how America works. America still is somewhat of a business. So when jobs and things get cut, that doesn't mean the need is not there. That just opens up a way for the next businessman or for people from where we come from to open up that company and employ our people. Now that's less work on the government, and that's less work on us relying on the government.
And in addition to taking taxpayer money, we are now acquiring more and more debt. We're now almost at $37 trillion
because
in
money
debt.
is being misused and it's being shipped overseas and it's going into certain people's pockets and it's going into agendas and even media with certain protocols. And that's why I tell people.
And the numbers of federal employees and employees on every level, but the federal government just keeps on expanding it. And it's unclear, are they actually doing jobs that are necessary? And so if Doge can come in and get rid of the waste, fraud, and corruption, why aren't the Democrats saying, yes, okay, this is a good thing, so that the money that is going to actually good, effective programs can keep on going?
Because they're afraid that somewhere along the line they have got caught up in some illegal things as well.
Probably true, too.
And some state funders. Because one thing I was told, and somebody told this to me, and a citizen told this to me, and I'm glad they told me. They said, you might try to change as much as you try to change the system, but there's already contracts put in place before you get in that office.
Right. Well, no, and Trump is, or Elon, is actually cutting a bunch of those contracts and announcing that we're not going to actually continue with them. Things that have been funded but not paid for yet, they're actually getting rid of. So I think that's great. I think that's actually the smartest thing I've ever seen anybody come into government and do, because this is waste, fraud, and abuse, and it's crazy.
Anyone who believes that government does have a place in helping people who are in need should cheer this on, right? That we have to, the Democratic Party has to kind of get it straight, is that when we start covering it up, in this case, protesting against somebody cracking down on waste, fraud, and corruption, how does that make us look?
No, crazy. You know what? One of the great things he's doing, I think, is rooting out this corruption in Social Security, where there are hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people getting Social Security checks who
are dead,
who are not Americans,
I've heard
who are
Democrats
criminals.
condemn him for cracking down on this Social Security fraud. I don't understand it.
It's a moral thing. Everybody gets wrapped up, and because I do a lot of community talk, so we have these conversations just outside of the suit, right? And it's funny because a lot of people get caught up on how many kids he got, if he's married, if he's not, and they get caught up at the man, right? And I understand that because where we come from,
he's clearly a bit of a character.
Yeah, but where we come from, those type of things hinder us and stop us from where we're going. So now we're surprised at America that they let this man do this, but outside we also got to take a step back and understand that his IQ level and what he's trying to do. As long as if he's being transparent with us and allowing us to see the information and what's going on, and we should applaud that. Now, if we're not able to see what's going on and you're not telling us, then you're no better than the same people you're auditing.
I've learned a lot from his revelations, and I'm glad he's doing something about them.
And on that note, we're going to have to say goodnight.
Oh, man. But you did great, and I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for you. I'm a Democrat, and I would like to endorse this Republican conservative.
Yes.
Thank you so much.